Hi everybody. So this panel is titled Women Who Resist. And essentially we felt that it was really important to recognise officially the fact that in this particular area of work or of activism or of volunteering, the proliferation of women in the space is really evident. You know, particularly on the ground and in real kind of working in personal contact with people, solidarity support, activism, provision of care, social care. A lot of it's being done by women. And I don't know if that's something that we sort of acknowledge enough to say, this is an amazing thing, that women really excel in that area and they're badass, basically. So to celebrate the badassness of women, I've got four amazing women up on the stage who've all been part of the summit in various different ways, sharing their stories, contributing or organising the summit. And I'm just literally going to pass the mic and let everybody speak to you about their motivations for doing what they do, what drew them to this work or to this calling, depending on how you look at it, and what solidarity means to them. So I'm going to start off with Zohra. If you just want to introduce yourself and talk about your organisation, your personal story, whatever really you want to say. Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to say good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here among you all amazing people, super women and men people here. My name is Zohra, and as she said, I'm from Women Refugee route, and my personal experience or my personal motivation is because of my experience, and it's my personal story, and I want to make it very short. I was born in 1989 in Afghanistan. And in 1989, if you remember here, it was the beginning of a peaceful time here in Europe, and especially the ending of Cold War. But in Afghanistan, during that time, it was the beginning of a war. So growing up in work, especially moving around, it was the very natural thing for me. I didn't know better thing that time. And when I was 5 years old, I was, even though I was born in war, I was very privileged because I was born in a family where my dad was a true feminist, which was always my role model, and he was a politician. So when I was 5 years old, I wanted to be like him, a powerful man. He was, and I want to be exactly like him. But and I was very afraid to be like my grandmother because she was illiterate. And she was so powerless. Whenever I asked her something, she was just like, I don't know. I'm illiterate. I don't know anything. So I said to my parents that I have to start school. I was 5, and they said, are you crazy? You have to wait. But I started because I was resisting that. And I was insisting. So because of the war, schools always closed, and after 2 days, 3 days, we had to stop, and then we had to move to a small village and come back. And when Taliban came, I found out that my dream about education was gone, far away. So I was very upset, and I was very afraid, and I was sure that I will end up like my grandmother. But then my parents decided to move to Iran because they said you can educate yourself and we can start a life there. But in Iran, as a refugee, we did not have any right. We couldn't work, I couldn't go to school. So my parents went almost for a year going to each school to tell them that if my kids can go to school, and they said no, even though we had visa, so we were not, we were legal there. So what I did normally, every day I would sit nearby a window, looking outside to other kids going to school, and secretly cry. And one day my dad catched me, and he was like, this is enough, we can't be here for a longer time. So we decided after that move to Europe, not with visa, of course, the other way around. And after 5 years, we landed in Denmark. And when I landed in Denmark, I was like, yes, I was thirsty for education. That 13 years old girl was thirsty for education. So I started school, and then I knew I want to be a lawyer, and I become a lawyer. But I promised myself, whatever I do in future, I will never forget that little girl who was crying nearby the window. Because I know there's lots of girls in camps who are waiting, not girls, boys also, lacking education, and they want the basic thing that for everyone else here, especially in Europe, it's a natural thing. But for them, it is a luxury. And then I met Mina Jaff, who is the founder of Women Refugee Route, and she invited me to the organization. And through Women Refugee Route, I got the chance to meet all those refugees in Greece, in different places, and tell them my story, but also supporting them. I just mentioned Mina Jaff. You might think why she is not here with me. It is because I was very privileged to get my Danish citizenship 2 years ago, but she hasn't got it. She has still refugee status. That means that she can't travel as I can. She can't move around, and she was also suffered with the U.S. ban, and that shows. Even though if you want to do something, want to do something for refugees, there's always something standing in front of you and trying to stop you to change. And that is the problem. And even though I have now Danish citizenship, I will always be the second-class citizen. So whenever if the politician decides something else, they can take my citizenship. So it's not because I will have it forever. And I will forever be challenged, but my challenge is nothing comparing to those women who are in refugee camps. I can't compare it at all. And that's all my motivation is, so I hope I will continue working for refugees.
Thank you very much. Brilliant, thank you for sharing that. That's amazing, really inspiring. And now, so just passing the mic to you, if you want to just give us some insights, same stuff really, just what motivates you, why are you here, how did you get into the activism, and kind of just, give us some insights.
Okay, I started volunteering at my local migrant centre at the end of 2016. And I had some friends who were talking about wanting to stop a deportation around about the same time. So I was volunteering at my local migrant centre, and really I was, I'd heard about Calais and what was happening to people at sea, but I hadn't, until I started volunteering, realised the extent of the suffering and what the hostile environment actually meant in my own community. So I found that I live in northeast London. I was working with people, very often women with small children, who were really at the sharp end of the hostile environment. Nearly everyone has some kind of mental health issue. Women really, really struggling in dire poverty. We did lots of food bank referrals. Women in abusive relationships that they didn't feel like they could get out of. And even in a number of cases, women who were trapped in conditions of modern slavery. So this is what the hostile environment means, and where I live is not unusual. This is happening right across the country, certainly in all major cities and towns. So my friends were talking about doing an action and asked me if I might be interested. And initially we didn't settle right at the start at the idea of stopping a deportation at the airport, but that is what the plan ended up being. So in March 2017, we staged an occupation by a plane that was going to be forcibly deporting people to Nigeria and Ghana. And for me, we did the action. This was before the Windrush scandal broke. So it was common knowledge among, sort of certain communities, like what was happening, like the fact that people are snatched from their community, snatched off the street, but on the basis of like, racial profiling and government targets, thrown into detention centres. In some cases, very quickly, people would be pushed out of the country without ever having spoken to a lawyer, and the chances of resisting are so much, or people being able to secure their status in the country are so much higher if people have legal representation. So for me, it was just so offensive that this stuff happens at all, and that it happens in my community. And I could see in my own work volunteering at the migrant centre that women in particular are on the sharp end of this, and the children. And in terms of what solidarity means for me, I mean, I just think like I could be walking down my own street and passing by someone who might experience life in detention and being threatened with deportation or actually deported. And that could be me, like if I was born somewhere else. So I did the action because I thought it could be me, and if it was me, then I would want people to act. So that's my story. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mel. Thank you. So, Sarah, you have a mic. Yeah. So if you would just share with us, your insights, what motivates you, what drives you to do the work that you do. Just to give us the lowdown on your...
I mean, first I want to say I feel so privileged to be with you guys on the same panel and to be in the same room with everyone else. So for me, actually, it started from self-care. I landed in Lesbos in 2015, August, and I didn't know it's Lesbos. I didn't know actually anything about it because wasn't provided with any information. But a year later, I actually feared the place that I landed in, and I said, if I want to actually continue with my life, I need to go back to this place that I'm scared of. And I wanted to go to Lesbos again, which is crazy. I didn't even know it was Lesbos, but then I received a message, when I said earlier, from a volunteer on my Facebook telling me that there's some kids come up to them in their swimming training that they give for the pickpack and say they want to be like the Mardini sisters and learn swimming. And he just told me that, and I think I don't need more than a child saying, I want to be you, to leave everything behind and go to Lesbos. And then after I reached Lesbos and spent the first 2 weeks, it turned to 2 years, which on and off. Because I think for once I felt as a human being I'm needed, and I have a lot to provide, which is only maybe moving my mouth and speaking the language, or being a search and rescue swimmer, and maybe my love for swimming as well. So actually it's very hard to answer this question because I have no answer. But I think for me is I believe strongly with giving back, because I bet everyone in this room, you got something from somewhere. You don't know. Maybe someone gave you a cup of water in the street, maybe someone holds your arm up when you fell, free education maybe, even a free cup of coffee, anything. And I believe that we all have to give back. And for me, my blessing that I actually arrived completely healthy with my sister to Europe, not even scratch. I mean, I gained an injury later, but it's just destiny in life. But when I got to Germany, I just couldn't get over the fact that there is hundreds and thousands of people are still there. And I cannot just get a free education without actually doing something in return. And I think that's what drove me the most. And then when I went to Lesbos and I met the humanitarians field and volunteers and the activists, and actually I never called myself an activist. I got the title after I was released, and then I became a human rights defender. So there's two things. Number one is the community. I mean, you guys can speak about that as well. It's such a wonderful, selfless society that people are ready not skip a heartbeat to do something. And I don't think I saw this anywhere else. And the second thing, why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I'm done as a refugee having people standing up speaking for me. I have a very loud voice. I can shout, I can speak, and just not me. There's hundreds others who can speak to themselves, and I don't need someone who, grew up in Germany to stand up and talk about my rights, because you don't know anything about my rights or about me. And as long as you see me as a number and a problem, not saying my name, give me one politician stood up and said, Sarah Mardini is suffering from this issue. They just said the refugees, this person. So I think that's what drives me the most. I don't want anyone to speak up for me. I can speak up for me and for everyone else. And the human rights conventions that is happening for refugees, it's just unbelievable. If it happens here or somewhere else, it's just gonna be a crime, you know? Like I'm sure you're gonna end up having a lifetime sentence if you do it for, like, let's say, British kid. But when it's a refugee kid, it's okay, it's fine. No one cares. So what drives me is actually the injustice. And again, I can speak up for myself, and I don't need anyone to stand up on panels speaking for me, because I can do it, and I know a lot of people who can do it. And just, if you don't know much about refugees, it's super easy. Just go out for it. My best friend Claudia actually always say, go out for a tea. Take a cup of tea with that refugee and tell me what you think after. And we are very diverse, intellectual, artistic, intelligent community. But you just need to come close a bit and see us. And I think that's it. And I think everybody, just when you leave from here today, just think about what you hear. And just think about the word refugee. It's a weapon, but no one knows that. It's a very strong word. You're actually talking about someone who lost everything. So they're ready to do anything. So I want people to stop seeing us as victims, because we're not. I'm not a victim. Yes, I crossed by boat, came to Europe, I went to jail for 3 months, and now I have a trial, but I'm not a victim. And no one else and no refugees are victims. We just need to empower them from inside, because we are the reason why they are in these situations. So I think that's it from my side.
Yep, that was brilliant. Okay, so Maddie, I'll introduce Maddie as one of the co-organisers of the summit and a dear friend of mine as well. But I'm going to give you the floor. Same thing. Tell us about yourself, your motivations. Thanks.
I'm just going to precursor by saying I'm feeling a bit frazzled after the last couple of days, so I don't know whether I'm going to be as articulate as my fellow panellists, but I shall give it a go. I guess I do two things. I run a human rights project, which is I spent a lot of time as an activist in Dunkirk and in Greece as well. Before that, I was a festival organiser, so I think coming into that situation really naively and kind of initial motivation, I think really, and again, I feel very naive in saying this, but I'm a white middle-class woman from the UK, and I'm very privileged, and I don't think I was in any way fully aware of really the reality of what was going on and what has been going on for a long time, and I was totally shocked by the impunity by which states are able to act. Witnessing myself, but also in that situation, this is back in 2015 and 16, all kinds of rights violations taking place, police violence being a big one in northern France, and watching police carry out violence towards forcibly displaced people in a horrific situation with mainstream media filming and it not stopping. And I was totally shocked, and actually the shock, I guess, is not that people don't know that it's happening, it's actually just the motivation to prevent that isn't there. So the project that I set up is called Humans for Rights Network, and it's really about trying to create a platform for those that are directly experiencing those violations to be able to report them themselves. I think not letting them get away with it is something that I think about a lot. I think that we collectively as activists, as those that are directly experiencing what is taking place, like we are all witnesses rather than victims. We are witnesses to what is happening to people around us, and unless we collectively kind of use that, particularly those of us that are born into safe situations, use that privilege as a witness, then they are going to continue to get away with it. So I don't know, those are kind of some of my motivations. And I think in terms of the summit, kind of community and collaboration and capacity building and really doing it properly, and really considering what our motivations are, but making sure that the work that we're doing is being done in the right way and is respectful and is platforming those with lived experience as much as possible. The summit organising team is myself and Prue and Laura, who's in the audience. So we are 3 women who have, with amazing help from people, put this on. The summit, I feel like, is a mark in the sand. There's incredible work that's been going on before this point, but it feels really amazing to bring together everybody in a room, and exciting to see what might come from that. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm just going to offer the mic to the floor. If anybody has anything that they want to ask the panelists or any insights, we've got a bit of time for taking some audience questions. If you do, just wave at me and I'll run down with the mic. Do you want to do it? Okay.
Hi, yeah, this is for all of you. I've been thinking a lot about mentoring and learning from, especially women with experience and knowledge that I don't have. So I was wondering, do any of you have stories to share of people that you've learned from, women that you've learned from, especially learned to resist from?
I actually do, yeah. I like the question. My motivation actually comes from my best friend. Her name is Claudia Drost, which I think some people here met and work with. She is 24 years old, Dutch girl who left everything, I think 5 years. And she went around Asia, and she was based in Lesbos for 3 years. And she's done way, way, way more what I've did. And I think Claudia, for me, now I'm using her too in Berlin. She will advocate about Lesbos and what's going on. I think I never saw anyone is as powerful and writes. She actually take it very seriously. That is her own family. And when she started, she worked with an organization called Because We Carry. So they do a couple activities in the camps. So they have kids activities. They have they distribute actually breakfast every morning since a couple of years now in one of the camps. And Claudia started yoga classes where she brings a lot of women from different cultures in Moria refugee camp, and they just dance together and breaks the ice between each other and just talk to each other. And she actually started also Moria Running Club because she got an athlete from Somalia actually and told her that she's a professional. So she just started a whole club for this girl. And now she's coming to Berlin for a couple of days, and then she's going to Iraq to work as a field director in Erbil. So I would never go there. It's a war zone. Like for me, it's off limit. I would never go. But then Claudia just goes there. I think maybe that's my answer for my question. Is Claudia Drost? It's my best friend. Look her up and just see the amazing work she's been doing since 3 years till now. And it's sad because they don't get recognized because she's Dutch and because she's white. It breaks my heart. We're the same people who are doing the same job. And I don't like that the fact that Claudia does not have the platform that I do, but I do because I'm a refugee. So I wish that one day I'll have her in the same panel and people will recognize also that there is a volunteers who is French or British or other people who actually come and put a lot of effort and spend their time there. Yeah, I think that's my answer. I think you should say Mina's story.
Yes, I've had a lot of, I can't say one, but I've had a lot of people when I was kid until now, but recently is Mina Jaff, who started the Women Refugee Route in 2015. And she is, I wish she was here, so you all could meet her. She's an amazing woman, and the first time I met her, she was like, you're too soft, you have to be loud, you have to say directly, and you're too nice, you can't survive this world, or this field. And the first word, or just phrase she taught me was just say white male who's deciding everything. And I was like, no, this is too much. And she was like, no, just say it aloud. And then I practiced in front of her, actually. It was very fun, but then I realized that I couldn't dare saying something directly to some people because I thought I was not privileged enough to say it. But she said to me, whenever you have a mic, just right now, just use it and say it loud and think about your mind. Don't think about the policies, don't think about anything else. She's very fearless and she has spent more her time on Greece and everywhere else than I know anyone else. And she was the one who was, the first fact was that she was born in prison. And that is, and she was born, as she said always, she was born feminist. So that is it.
Hello. Just wondering, because I think this is just a general question, because we've talked a lot about Greece and about France. I don't know if anyone has any insight on Italy or Spain or what's happening there. Are there any grassroots kind of projects happening there? And just out of interest, I thought maybe because you get information that, I don't know, it feels like it's a blank space of not when it comes to knowledge.
Unfortunately, I don't know much because I was based in Greece and I'm banned as well from there, so and still criminal, so I don't think I can go there. But I just heard recently that actually Sea-Watch ship 2, it's back in the sea, and it's like it's out of they had a case or something.
There aren't any international grassroots in Italy, but there is a Facebook group called People to People Solidarity Italy, so that has some information about how you can help, but it's really difficult because they don't actually allow foreign organisations, foreign volunteers. It's not easy for us to actually work in Italy. It has to be done by their local, their own charities and their own organisations.
So a good friend of mine and colleague who I work with in Greece is is Italian, and she's actually working in refugee support at the moment in Italy, which is her home country. And I think that I can sort of
a more grassroots way. You do it maybe with squats, with social centers, but there's not this massive. Also because people in Italy got less money. I live in London, and my young friends have got more money than my Italian friends. So it's also difficult to find funding resources. So it's completely different. So I'm Sicilian, and I spoke with the doctor of Lampedusa, Bartolo, I was saying before. There was the only doctor on the island of Lampedusa, where all the people come from Libya, and they're out there. It's been there for like 20, 30 years, and now it's in the parliament, in the European Parliament. And yeah, they have 300 spaces in official government place, reception center, 300 beds in Lampedusa. Check straight away, go to Sicily or South Italy in reception center for 8 months, 9, after they join another government organization project, which is mine, SPRAR. So there's not like citizen really do the welcoming reception activities like NFI or no. It's more like integration project, socialization, cultural projects, help with informations, but it's completely different organization. The government is there, and it's actually much better than Greece. It's not perfect, it's very bad, but it's not comparison with Greece. You can see the difference.
Hi there. This is more, I wanted to get back to the topic of women activists. And it's not necessarily a question, it's a thing to say to the women in this room who are activists. Well, sorry, I haven't had any drink for a long time, sorry. It's more that, number one, thank you to all of you for sharing your story, but also to reiterate how important it is for the women in this room to share their stories, especially the brown ones, especially the working class ones, you know, or whatever marginalised background you come from. People need to hear it, and it inspires other people wherever they are, other women. So please, thank you for doing that, but I encourage every woman to do that in this room.
Okay. I think there's one more. Let's take one quickly.
Hello to everyone. My tribute to Zohra, and the world is a very, very small place. You're same as just my daughter. I came to this country when I was 20 years old as a refugee, and Nina born exactly the same year as you. And I was fighting for the Afghan women and the girls in Iran as an Iranian, and we used to go to the pride part of the Tehran, and with the kind of like underground activity, helping the girls and the women and taking the books for them, teaching them. I just wanted to know, there was some Iranian women or young people, I was only 17 years old when we were doing that as a group of activists, going to the Afghan area, helping them with the toothbrush, taking the book for them as an Iranian. So when you were talking, I was crying in here, and obviously when you were in Iran, I wasn't there, I was just flew from Iran to here as a refugee. But everywhere in the world, no matter what, there is people are, their heart beating for each other as a human rights, whatever you want to call it, activists or human lover. We are a human lover. We love human being, and doesn't matter where we are and what country or what nationality we have. So.
Someone's been waiting for ages.
I'm not sure I can follow that, actually. I think human lover is now going to be my stock phrase. Thank you so much for sharing that story. My question was in a similar way, was to bring us back to the question of sort of women and activism, was if you could advise us, each of you, one action, I know it's a big ask, that you would like us as women to take from today and to go forward and do perhaps in the next week, what might that be?
I think what I would say to that is something that we've kind of taken from the conversations over the past couple of days, is to really make sure that in your work, in your activism, in your volunteering, that you really are thinking about prioritising those with lived experience in those conversations.
For me, I would say lifting up each other, because in your work area or in your school, forget activists and volunteers, put them all away now. And as a woman, or in general, for men and women, lifting up each other, because we're brave enough to speak up, and because my mom pushed me to speak up, my best friend pushed me, my friend pushed me, and my father did. So I think it's just lift each other up. That's my idea.
Well, yes, I'd agree with the last contribution. Like, absolutely lift each other up. Self-care. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Yeah, we have to look after ourselves and be sustainable as individuals, but caring for each other is really, really important.
I have just first one comment to this, just a very short. My story about Iran was not because I have anything against Iranian people. It's more about the systems that exist in Iran, Afghanistan, all over the place against refugees. So it's not humans, but systems that I'm not happy with. And the thing with I can't give any advice, because I think you all are so clever and wise, so I can't give anything that way. But we live in a world where being a refugee sees often as a crime that she was suffering. So standing up for refugees and supporting them is a revolutionary action, that you're all part of it. So just clapping your shoulders, any woman here and any man, of course, and just celebrate it. Just celebrate yourself. Celebrate that you think about solidarity. Think about that no matter what, we're all in the same boat. And we need to just survive together. Just if you see us we all humans, from a helicopter perspective, we're a very tiny thing from universe side. We can't do anything. And if we act individually, we can do nothing. So being together in this room and raising our voice, lifting each other, that's the only way to achieve much greater.
I think that's a perfect way to finish. So thank you very much, guys. So I think now we're just going to segue straight into our closing. We're just going to wrap it up with a few words, basically from a kind of summit point of view, just kind of tying up the summit. So we just want to welcome onto the stage our summit organising partner, Laura. Is she still here? Laura, hey, yes. Coming up. So we're just going to say a few words about the process, the journey. Do you want to start with that? Or have I put you on the spot? Okay, great. Okay, pass.
I just want to say thank you to a great panel, and just some of the questions from the audience, I have lots of tears and feel very heartful, so just it was a lovely way to finish the process, actually. It started, I think, from two discussions that were happening. There was one discussion which was about how do we unite the work that's happening in the UK with the work that's happening across Europe in support of people on the move. So that was one question that we were beginning to think about, and how do we organise that network better, and that transfer. And the second thing was about self-care, so the fact that actually there was a huge issue, as you're all aware, about what happens when you're doing a sprint rather than a marathon, to use your words, Mel. And often you're feeling like that's what you have to do because the problems are so huge. And so that was part of how we organised, was just to focus on those two questions. But in fact, I think as we moved from those two questions, I just want to say something about intention, and then I'm going to pass on. We realised that, well, I can say it, brave and take the mic and say it, just that it's a very white male world, even in the refugee solidarity sector. And we didn't particularly want to reproduce any of the things that we think could be pathological about that. And we really wanted to organise as a collective and make sure that we had voices in the room that are often not heard, but actually the most powerful voices, the voices that should be heard. So we've worked quite hard on sort of like, I guess, the collective wisdom of all the people who are involved in different ways in the sector.
Adi, do you want to say anything now about the process, learnings, whatever?
Yeah, I think a couple of things sort of from what Laura said. The way in which we programmed was we had some kind of, as I guess in the work that we do, some particular conversations that we felt were important to start, but we also did a process of open submission, so kind of cast the net really wide and invited people to really raise the ideas and the questions and the things they wanted to talk about and the problems they might be having or the capacity that they're lacking. And it's been incredible, the kind of diversity of the kinds of ideas and projects that have come forward, but I think's really shown our program's really packed. And I think that we, as a learning, is that there's incredible work happening, and actually rather than show everything, we need to give things a little bit more space, I think. Yeah, I think that's what I wanted to add.
Okay, so I'm just going to add to this some insights that this process has been a journey and a learning for us, and we learned a few things, and we encountered a few things that were quite interesting learnings, I'd say. We definitely came up against the patriarchy, feeling shut down in the room, being women that were coming with an idea and sharing with groups who had a little more power than us, perhaps because they have money or they had a very public and well-known organisation with a kind of emblemic status, that we felt that our ideas were shut down and our causes were co-opted, and that was an interesting process. And also we noticed a kind of a bit of a systemic lack of prioritisation for capacity building and recognising the work of the grassroots, of civil society, of people mobilising. It was a lot about kind of, I don't really know that's kind of, we felt that it wasn't quite deserving enough in some cases of significant funding. So we did have to sort of scrabble around a little bit to make that happen and pull from lots of different pots. And in some ways, the people that came up for us, that showed up for us, were unexpected. Please do share with us feedback. I know we keep banging on about this, but it's part of the frustration we had with the funding was not being able to demonstrate the need. And so there's a need, clearly. There's so many conversations, there's a deficit, but there's enormous capacity to unite, to share our ideas and to unify and be stronger, more networked. So please do feedback to us so that we can make sure that we can pass that on, and we're going to do it again with more kinds of amazing stuff. All right, cheers.
Thank you.